Lila Carter had always loved exploring the mountains near Solara 9. The mining colony where she lived was full of machines and humans working every day, but Lila liked to escape to the quiet places. One morning, as she walked along a narrow path, she noticed a faint sound, a soft whimper that did not belong to any human or known animal. She followed the sound and soon found a small creature lying in a hollow among the rocks. It was a dragon hatchling, smaller than she expected, with scales that shimmered like molten metal. But something was wrong. The hatchling lay weakly on the ground, its wings trembling and its chest rising slowly with each breath. Lila could see that it was badly hurt. Some of its scales were cracked, and there were small cuts along its side. She knew she had to do something fast if it was going to survive. Fear ran through her. Dragons were powerful, even from birth, and she had only heard stories of the dragon's strength and intelligence. But as she looked at the tiny creature, she felt a strong need to help it. She knelt down slowly, speaking in a soft voice to calm it. She could see the hatchling's eyes flicker with recognition, a small glimmer of trust in the midst of pain. Lila remembered what her grandmother had taught her about healing animals. She had learned about natural remedies, how to clean wounds and use herbs to reduce pain and infection. She quickly gathered a few plants nearby and crushed their leaves to make a paste. With careful hands, she applied it to the cuts on the hatchling's side. It whimpered but did not struggle, and Lila felt a small sense of hope. Next, she needed to keep the hatchling safe and warm. The mountain mornings were cold, and she knew that if the creature stayed exposed, it might not survive. Lila looked around and found some large leaves and soft moss. She built a small nest-like structure to protect the dragon. She gently lifted it, placing it in the makeshift shelter. The hatchling rested its head on her arm, trusting her in a way that surprised her. She knew food would be important too. From her studies of biology back at the colony, Lila remembered that young dragons needed strong nourishment. She looked through her backpack and found some nutrient paste she had made for her own experiments. Slowly, she fed the hatchling, careful not to startle it. The dragon opened its tiny mouth and ate, gaining a little strength with each bite. Lila smiled, seeing the life return to its eyes. Hours passed, and the sun began to rise higher. Lila stayed with the hatchling, checking its breathing and making small adjustments to the nest. She noticed that its wings were starting to twitch more steadily and that its scales had a faint shine again. She felt relief but also worry. She knew that this was only the beginning, and the hatchling would need more help to survive fully. As she worked, Lila thought about the dragon's parents. The stories said that dragon eggs were guarded by their emperors, creatures of great power and wisdom. She realized that helping this hatchling might bring her face to face with a creature far larger and more dangerous than she had ever imagined. But she did not feel fear now. She felt responsibility and courage. She had to protect the hatchling at all costs. Suddenly, a shadow passed over the mountain. Lila looked up and saw birds flying in a scattered pattern, disturbed by something large moving below. She kept her eyes on the hatchling, who now lifted its head slightly and looked toward the shadow. Lila understood that something was approaching, something that could change everything she had done so far. Her heart beat faster, but she stayed calm, ready to face whatever came next to keep the hatchling safe. The hatchling shivered slightly in her arms, and Lila whispered, "Don't worry, I will help you. I won't let anything happen to you." The small creature seemed to understand, nestling closer. Lila looked at the mountain horizon, thinking of the journey ahead. She knew this discovery would not only challenge her courage, but also teach her about the hidden worlds that humans had never seen before. She carefully gathered more herbs and cleaned water from a nearby stream, preparing to care for the hatchling for the whole day. She knew she could not leave it alone, and the thought of asking for help from others made her uneasy. Humans in Solara 9 had never seen a dragon alive, and she could not risk causing panic. It was up to her, and she accepted the responsibility fully. By the evening, the hatchling had begun to move more freely, stretching its tiny wings and testing its strength. Lila watched, amazed at its resilience. She felt a connection she could not explain, a bond between human and dragon that went beyond fear or logic. She whispered softly, "We will get through this together," and the hatchling responded with a faint, happy chirp. Lila knew that the days ahead would be difficult. Healing the hatchling completely would take time, knowledge, and courage. But as she sat by its side under the evening sky, she felt ready. She had discovered not only a creature in need but also her own strength and determination. She would face whatever came, for the hatchling and for the possibility of changing the understanding of humanity in a universe that had never fully appreciated it. Lila Carter woke early the next day, determined to help the dragon hatchling fully recover. She had watched it through the night, listening to its quiet breaths and making sure it stayed warm. The small creature had grown a little stronger, but it was still weak. Lila knew she needed to do more than just keep it safe. She began by examining the cuts and bruises again. Using the herbs she had gathered the day before, she made a fresh paste to apply to the wounds. She worked carefully, cleaning the areas gently so the hatchling would not feel more pain. As she worked, the creature lifted its head and looked at her with eyes that seemed to show understanding. Lila felt a mix of pride and relief. Each small improvement encouraged her to continue. Food was next. She had learned that the hatchling needed proteins and minerals to strengthen its body. Lila remembered some seeds and dried roots she had stored for her experiments. She soaked them in water and ground them into a soft mixture. Slowly, she fed the hatchling, watching it eat carefully. Each bite gave it more energy, and she could see its small wings twitching more steadily. She smiled, feeling hope grow inside her. While preparing food, Lila noticed that the hatchling tried to move toward the light. Its tiny legs were still shaky, but it wanted to explore. She realized that it needed exercise even at its fragile stage. She gently lifted it and allowed it to stretch its wings within the safety of the moss nest. The hatchling flapped lightly, and Lila's heart filled with joy at the sight of its progress. Lila also thought about protection. The mountains were quiet, but predators could come at any time. She constructed a small enclosure using rocks, leaves, and sturdy branches. The hatchling could move freely but would remain safe inside. Lila's engineering skills helped her build it quickly and securely. She admired the creature's scales as it rested inside the enclosure, now brighter and more colorful than before. As she worked, Lila heard the sounds of distant voices. Some human miners were exploring nearby, but she stayed hidden, not wanting anyone to discover the dragon. She knew the consequences could be serious. Humans had never encountered a living dragon, and the news could bring fear or curiosity that would put the hatchling in danger. Lila whispered to herself, "This is our secret, and we will keep it safe." Hours passed, and the hatchling showed more energy. It even attempted to chirp softly, a sound that seemed like a small victory. Lila continued her care, using the herbs, water, and food she had prepared. She cleaned its nest, made adjustments to the enclosure, and observed its breathing carefully. Each moment gave her new understanding of the creature and the patience required to help it heal. By evening, the hatchling could move around inside the enclosure, stretching and testing its strength. Lila watched with fascination as it lifted its tiny head and blinked at the setting sun. She realized how much effort it had taken to reach this stage and how much more there would be ahead. But she felt determined, knowing that her actions were making a real difference. As night fell, Lila sat beside the hatchling, thinking about what had brought her here. She had come to the mountains for adventure and curiosity, but now she had a mission, a responsibility to save a life unlike any she had ever known. She spoke softly to it, telling the hatchling that it would get stronger each day and that together they would face any challenge that came. Suddenly, she felt a tremor in the ground. It was subtle at first, but then it grew stronger. The hatchling lifted its head, sensing something powerful approaching. Lila's heart raced, but she stayed calm. She knew she would have to protect it, not only from the mountain dangers but also from creatures far more powerful than humans. She gently held the hatchling close and whispered, "We are ready, whatever comes." The bond between Lila and the hatchling grew stronger with each passing hour. She felt a deep sense of purpose and courage she had never experienced before. As she watched the little dragon stretch its wings and test its strength, she knew that the healing process was just the beginning. Soon, the hatchling would be strong enough to face the world, and Lila would be there to guide it and protect it, proving that humans, even small and young ones, could make a difference in a universe full of wonder and danger. The next morning, Lila awoke to a low rumble that shook the mountain slopes. At first, she thought it was an earthquake, but then she saw shadows moving across the rocks below. Her heart sank as she realized the source. A massive dragon approached. Its scales were dark and glimmered like molten metal under the rising sun. The creature's eyes were fierce and intelligent, and it carried a presence that made the air itself seem heavier. Dracones, the dragon emperor, had arrived. Lila held the hatchling close, feeling its small body tremble in fear. She knew the stories. The dragon emperor was a being of immense power and wisdom, feared by many civilizations. But now he was here, and Lila's small human courage was all that stood between the hatchling and potential danger. The emperor's gaze fell on the hatchling, and he let out a low, rumbling growl. It was not angry but cautious, a sound that carried the weight of authority and knowledge. Lila spoke softly, trying to calm both herself and the emperor. She stepped slowly forward, showing that she meant no harm. The hatchling shifted slightly, resting its head on her arm as if asking her to protect it. Dracones circled them, wings casting large shadows over the rocks. He lowered his massive head to the hatchling's level, sniffing and observing every detail. Lila watched nervously, knowing that one wrong move could provoke a reaction she could not handle. Yet she felt a strange calm, a sense that the emperor was judging not just the hatchling but also her. She spoke again, her voice steady, explaining quietly that she had found the hatchling wounded and had cared for it. She detailed her efforts to clean its wounds, feed it, and keep it safe. The emperor's eyes narrowed, analyzing every word and motion. Lila could feel the tension, the weight of his judgment, and the incredible intelligence behind those eyes. Finally, Dracones stepped back slightly. His growl softened, and he looked directly at Lila. It was a look of curiosity mixed with a hint of approval. The hatchling chirped faintly, and the emperor lowered his head closer, allowing it to touch his massive snout. Lila realized that he was acknowledging her actions, recognizing her bravery and the care she had shown. Even as she felt relief, Lila knew the test was not over. The emperor's presence was a challenge itself, a test of courage and understanding. She needed to continue showing respect and intelligence, proving that humans could be trusted with the life of a dragon. She stayed calm, attentive to every movement and sound, careful not to show fear. Dracones eventually moved higher on the rocks, watching them from above. His wings spread slightly, a sign of dominance and protection at the same time. The hatchling, now more confident, stretched its small wings and chirped again. Lila's heart swelled with hope. The emperor had accepted their presence, at least for now, and she felt that the bond between human and dragon had grown stronger in his eyes. The day passed slowly, with Lila observing the emperor from a safe distance. She realized that this encounter was only the beginning of a larger journey. Dracones' arrival had changed everything. Not only did she need to care for the hatchling, but she also had to navigate the presence of a being far greater than any human she had ever encountered. By evening, the emperor had returned to a ledge above, his eyes occasionally flicking toward the hatchling and Lila. They were being watched, tested, and acknowledged. Lila felt a mix of fear and determination. She knew that her actions in the coming days would not only affect the hatchling but could also shape the emperor's view of humanity itself. As night fell, she whispered to the hatchling, "We did well today. We will continue, and together, we will grow stronger." The small creature nuzzled her hand, trusting her completely. Lila looked up at the emperor's silhouette against the moonlight, feeling a quiet courage rise within her. This was the start of a bond that could change the world, a story of humans and dragons intertwined, beginning with a single act of care and bravery. The morning sun broke over the mountains, and Lila Carter prepared for another day with the hatchling. She knew that the Dragon Emperor, Draconis, had been observing them closely. His arrival had changed everything. She could sense his intelligence and the silent assessment in his eyes. Today, she would continue to prove that humans could be trusted. As she fed the hatchling, Draconis swooped down from his ledge, landing a short distance away. The ground shook under his weight. Lila remained calm, speaking softly to the hatchling, urging it to stay still. Draconis' eyes seemed to challenge her, as if he wanted to test her intentions and abilities further. Suddenly, the Emperor presented a challenge. He moved to a rocky area and indicated with his gaze a complex obstacle, jagged rocks and a small ravine. Lila understood immediately that he was testing her problem-solving skills. She had to find a way to help the hatchling cross safely. Drawing upon her knowledge of engineering, she gathered fallen branches and rocks to build a small bridge over the gap. Every movement was careful and deliberate, showing both her intelligence and respect for the creature she protected. Draconis watched silently. Each time the hatchling approached the bridge, Lila guided it patiently, showing calm leadership and understanding. The hatchling hesitated, but with gentle encouragement, it moved forward. Lila's heart raced, but she kept her focus. The Emperor's gaze was sharp, evaluating her every decision, noting her creativity and patience. When the hatchling finally reached the other side safely, Lila felt a surge of relief. Draconis made a deep rumbling sound, and for the first time it seemed like a low note of approval. Lila realized that he had been testing not only her care for the hatchling but also her ability to think and act under pressure. The Emperor then moved closer, observing how Lila tended to the hatchling's minor scratches that had appeared during the challenge. She cleaned the small wounds and applied a fresh herbal paste. Each action showed Draconis that she understood the balance of strength and gentleness, a quality that dragons valued highly. Throughout the day, Lila faced small tests, lifting debris, guiding the hatchling over uneven terrain, and using water from a nearby stream to clean a minor cut. Each time, Draconis watched intently, his expression unreadable but thoughtful. Lila realized that this was more than a simple observation. The Emperor was learning, assessing humans through her actions, and she needed to demonstrate the qualities that dragons respected: courage, intelligence, and empathy. By evening, the hatchling was stronger, and Lila had shown patience and skill in each task. Draconis rose above the mountain ridge, wings stretched wide, and let out a low, echoing rumble. Lila felt the vibration in her chest but did not flinch. The Emperor's response was a recognition of her abilities, a silent acknowledgement that humans could rise to challenges with courage and cleverness. As night fell, Lila sat beside the hatchling, reflecting on the day. The Emperor had not only tested her but had also demonstrated the depth of his understanding and wisdom. She whispered to the hatchling, "We are learning together. Humans and dragons can understand each other if we try." The hatchling chirped softly, nuzzling her hand. Lila looked at the shadow of Draconis against the moonlit mountains and felt a quiet determination. Today had proven that her courage and intelligence mattered. The Emperor's perception of humans had begun to change, and she knew that the days ahead would continue to challenge and teach her. She felt ready to face whatever came next, knowing that the bond between human and dragon was growing stronger, built on trust, respect, and shared courage. The next morning, Lila Carter noticed a change in the hatchling. Its small wings stretched further, and it seemed more confident with each step. The bond between them had grown stronger, and Lila could feel a connection that went beyond words. She understood that trust had been built slowly, and now it was deep enough for the hatchling to respond to her guidance without fear. Draconis observed from a nearby ledge, his gaze following every movement. Lila felt the weight of his scrutiny, but she was no longer intimidated. Instead, she felt a sense of partnership forming. The Emperor's watchful eyes were not just evaluating. They were witnessing the unique qualities of humans in action: courage, compassion, and ingenuity, all visible in Lila's care for the hatchling. As she guided the young dragon through a small clearing, the hatchling stumbled slightly. Lila rushed forward and gently steadied it, speaking softly, "It's okay, you're safe." Dracone's eyes softened just a fraction, as if acknowledging the subtle human qualities that the dragons often overlooked. The Emperor's silence spoke volumes. Observation had shifted to quiet respect. During the day, Lila explored ways to strengthen the hatchling's wings. She created a small exercise routine using branches and soft ground, encouraging the hatchling to flap and stretch. The young dragon responded eagerly, chirping in delight each time it managed a better movement. Lila cheered softly, feeling joy at its progress. Dracones watched quietly, seemingly impressed by her patience and methodical approach. A moment came when the hatchling climbed onto a small rock, balancing precariously. Lila stood nearby, ready to catch it if it fell. The Emperor's eyes followed closely. The hatchling's little body trembled, but it stayed steady. Lila whispered encouragement, and the dragon chirped in response, showing a growing understanding and trust. It was a small but significant victory, witnessed by Dracones, who let out a soft rumble that Lila interpreted as approval. The day continued with moments of learning and care. Lila taught the hatchling to recognize natural landmarks in the area and how to use its senses more effectively. The young dragon's movements became more confident, and it began exploring slightly farther from her side, always returning for guidance and reassurance. Dracones continued to watch, his massive head tilting slightly, intrigued by the human's ability to bond with and teach the dragon. As the sun began to set, Lila sat beside the hatchling, brushing a wing gently. Dracones flew closer, landing on a nearby ridge. The Emperor's eyes met hers, and for the first time, there was a quiet understanding between them. Lila realized that the bond she had built with the hatchling had become a bridge between humans and dragons. Dracones' respect for humans was growing, and the story of this connection was only beginning to unfold. The hatchling curled up next to her, resting its head on her arm. Lila whispered softly, "We're ready for tomorrow. Together, we can face anything." She looked up at the Emperor, whose presence now felt less threatening and more like a silent guardian. Lila understood that the bond between human and dragon had opened a door, one that could lead to a deeper alliance and mutual respect between species. That night, Lila watched the stars, thinking of the dragons and the universe beyond. The Emperor's observation had shifted into quiet admiration, and the hatchling's trust had created a connection that humans had never experienced before. She knew that this was the beginning of a new era, one where courage, care, and intelligence could bridge worlds, and she felt ready to face the challenges that lay ahead with her dragon companion by her side. A few days later, as Lila Carter and the hatchling trained in the mountain clearing, a distant rumble echoed across the valley. The air vibrated with an unfamiliar tension. Lila stopped immediately, her senses alert. The hatchling stiffened, its small body quivering with instinctual fear. Something powerful was approaching. From the horizon, dark shapes appeared, gliding swiftly toward them. Lila recognized them as foreign creatures, unlike any dragons she had read about. They were predators, massive and cunning, moving with a precision that suggested intelligence. Lila's mind raced. This was not just a natural threat. It was a challenge that required strategy, quick thinking, and courage. Dracones appeared in a sudden swoop, landing between Lila, the hatchling, and the approaching danger. His eyes blazed, and his roar shook the surrounding cliffs. Lila could feel the power emanating from him, yet she knew they could not rely solely on strength. She needed to act to help in a way that only humans could. Quickly, she scanned the terrain, looking for advantages. She spotted narrow paths and boulders that could be used to trap or slow the attackers. Using her knowledge of engineering, she began moving rocks and arranging branches to create obstacles. Dracones watched closely, allowing her to take the lead. Her small human hands worked quickly, and she communicated her plan to the hatchling, which responded instinctively, moving to designated positions. The attackers approached, testing Dracones' defenses. Lila guided the hatchling to distract the creatures while the Emperor used his power to defend key positions. Her strategy worked better than she hoped. The obstacles slowed the attackers, giving Draconis and the hatchling opportunities to counterattack. Each move required careful timing, intelligence, and courage. Lila felt the adrenaline, yet she remained focused, thinking several steps ahead. The battle continued, with Lila directing movements and adjusting the environment to aid the defense. She noticed weaknesses in the attacker's approach and instructed the hatchling to exploit them. Draconis, for the first time, seemed impressed by human ingenuity. The Emperor's roars echoed approval as the combined effort of human and dragon began to shift the tide. After a tense struggle, the attackers retreated, recognizing that the defense was too well organized. Draconis landed near Lila, his eyes meeting hers. There was no need for words. His expression conveyed respect and acknowledgement. Lila had shown that humans could contribute to defense in ways dragons could not predict, using intelligence and adaptability instead of brute strength. The hatchling chirped happily, recognizing the victory. Lila smiled, her heart pounding with relief. She realized that this experience had proven not only the hatchling's growing strength but also humanity's unique value. Draconis' view of humans had changed significantly, witnessing firsthand that small beings could make a big difference in critical moments. As evening fell, Lila tended to the hatchling, cleaning minor scratches sustained during the encounter. Draconis stood watch, silent but attentive. Lila whispered to the hatchling, "You see? Together we can face anything. Humans and dragons can protect each other." The hatchling responded with a soft chirp, nuzzling her hand. That night, Lila lay on the mountain, looking at the stars. She felt a sense of accomplishment and growing confidence. Her courage, quick thinking, and care had not only saved the day, but had also earned the trust of one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. The Emperor's respect was a quiet reminder that humans, though small, could have a profound impact on the world around them. Lila understood that her journey had only just begun, and she felt ready to face whatever new challenges awaited them. The morning after the battle, the mountains were quiet. Lila Carter sat beside the hatchling, tending to its minor injuries, when she sensed a change in the air. Draconis descended from a nearby ridge, his wings casting large shadows over the rocky clearing. There was no tension this time, only presence and attention. The Emperor's gaze met Lila's, and she felt a deep understanding conveyed without words. Draconis had witnessed her courage, intelligence, and care in ways that words could not express. The events of the previous days had proven her worth, and now he was acknowledging it. Draconis lowered his massive head close to the hatchling and then to Lila. It was a gesture of respect and recognition. Lila felt a mix of awe and humility. She realized that she had earned the Emperor's trust not through strength, but through compassion, intelligence, and determination. She understood that humans had qualities that dragons valued in unexpected ways. The Emperor made a low rumbling sound, almost like a wordless communication. Lila interpreted it as approval. Other dragons from nearby regions, who had been observing silently, began to approach. Their eyes were curious and cautious, yet there was no hostility. Lila realized that her actions had not only influenced Draconis but were beginning to shape the perception of dragons across the region. As the day continued, Lila guided the hatchling through exercises, allowing it to explore and test its strength. Draconis observed, occasionally interacting with the young dragon, allowing small touches of guidance. The Emperor's recognition of her efforts was clear. She had proven that humans were capable of care, strategy, and leadership. Later, Lila noticed smaller dragons approaching from the cliffs. They watched her with curiosity. Lila smiled and carefully demonstrated how to feed and help the hatchling. The young dragons seemed to understand, mimicking her movements. Draconis watched silently, his eyes showing a mix of approval and pride. Lila realized that her actions were setting an example, creating a bridge of understanding between humans and dragons. By evening, Draconis landed near her, wings folded, and exhaled a soft rumble. Lila understood that the Emperor was honoring her contribution. She whispered to the hatchling, "We've earned their respect, little one. Our bond matters, and they see that humans are more than they thought." The hatchling chirped softly in agreement, nuzzling her hand. That night, Lila gazed at the stars, reflecting on the journey. She had discovered courage within herself, built trust with the hatchling, and earned the recognition of one of the most powerful beings in existence. The events had proven that humans, even small and seemingly fragile, could influence and inspire others in ways beyond expectation. Lila felt a deep sense of purpose, knowing that this respect and recognition marked the beginning of a new chapter for humanity and dragons alike. The following days brought a sense of calm and possibility to the mountains. Lila Carter continued to care for the hatchling, now strong and agile, and she noticed how the young dragon began exploring further, learning and growing under her guidance. Draconis remained nearby, a silent but protective presence, his eyes always alert and observant. News of Lila's deeds seemed to spread among the dragons. Small groups approached cautiously, curious about the human who had healed a hatchling and stood fearlessly beside their emperor. Lila welcomed them gently, showing how humans could interact safely and respectfully with dragons. The bonds she formed began to extend beyond the hatchling, creating bridges of understanding between species. Lila realized that this was more than care for a single creature. Her actions demonstrated humanity's unique qualities: intelligence, compassion, courage, and adaptability. Draconis had witnessed it all and, in turn, began to share his wisdom with her. He allowed the hatchling to fly close to her side, guiding it while letting Lila encourage its independence. This trust between human and dragon symbolized a growing alliance that could change the galaxy. As the sun set, painting the mountains in golden light, Lila sat with the hatchling and looked at Draconis. The Emperor's eyes conveyed respect and gratitude. Lila understood that the Dragon Empire now saw humans as more than fragile beings. They were valuable allies, capable of creativity and bravery in ways dragons had never expected. The hatchling chirped and stretched its wings, ready to explore the skies. Lila smiled, feeling a mix of pride and hope. She whispered softly, "We've come a long way. The world is bigger than we imagined, and together, we can face it." Draconis rumbled, a sound that felt like agreement, and the young dragon chirped happily in response. From that day forward, humans and dragons worked together. Lila's actions inspired others from her colony to approach the dragons with curiosity and care rather than fear. The Emperor supported her, teaching the dragons about human ingenuity and the value of cooperation. Slowly, a new era emerged, one where humans were respected allies, their courage and intelligence acknowledged across species. Lila felt a deep sense of purpose. Her journey had begun with a single act of compassion, healing a fragile hatchling. Now it had grown into something far greater, shaping relationships, changing perceptions, and creating a legacy that would endure. She looked at the stars above, knowing that the bond between humans and dragons was only the beginning, and that the galaxy held countless opportunities for courage, friendship, and understanding. The mountains echoed with the sounds of dragons learning, flying, and growing alongside humans. Lila stood with the hatchling at her side, feeling hope and determination. She had discovered that even the smallest human could make a profound difference. Together, they had begun a new era, one that would be remembered for generations, a testament to the power of bravery, intelligence, and compassion.